Yay, okay, names matter. We're going to be talking about why names matter and why we have to name this thing. I don't want to set this up to be adversarial. I feel like it's going to be adversarial, like we're all against headless, right? We're trying to set up a new name. But to some extent, we are trying to forge an identity here. So names matter. Here's an example of a kid who was on a Zoom class and he did not want to participate. He didn't want to participate. So he renamed himself as Reconnecting. But he got caught because he couldn't spell. He couldn't spell. So he renamed himself Reconnecting so he didn't have to participate in the class. Am I too loud for this thing?
Too tall.
Too tall. All right. Reconnecting. Here's another funny one. As a father of, I've totally murdered this. I'm so sorry. There we go. As a father of multiple kids that sponge off my Netflix account, this one's pretty good too. Person who pays for the account, then Parasite 1, Parasite 2, Parasite 3. That's really great. But Netflix account naming takes the cake is the girl who wanted to continue using her boyfriend's Netflix account after they broke up. So she renamed her account settings in here and put this little like throbber thing. And so for 6 months, he didn't realize that his ex-girlfriend was using his Netflix account. And Netflix actually appreciated this. He put this on Twitter and Netflix like chimed in and said, really great job, right? So names matter, and these are all funny and everything, but there are some situations that are more significant. I didn't want to make slides on these because I didn't want to trivialize them, but there are situations in our world that we use names to frame things. The conflict over in the Middle East. Somebody pointed out that a certain media outlet, whenever people on one side die, they call that dying. 100 people died. On the other side, it's 100 people were killed. The name they give it to is different. After Hurricane Katrina, there was a newspaper that somebody noted that whenever they had a picture of somebody looting a store, if they were black, it was a looter. If they weren't black, it was a trapped or stranded resident. So names very much matter in that respect. I saw something the other day where a gentleman speaking Arabic was translated, and he was saying something to the effect of, we do everything, the subtitle that appeared in the bottom of the screen was, we do everything for Allah. What's wrong with that translation? We do everything for Allah. What's wrong with that? They didn't translate Allah. Allah is just Arabic for God. Why didn't they say we do everything for God? And the reason why they didn't do that is because leaving that word Allah qualified it, framed it. If they said we do everything for God and they named it God, that would have made it very relatable to Americans. In fact, that would have sounded like a lot of evangelical Christians. So they left the name. They used name as kind of a framing device. Okay, quiz. What's this? Guitar. What's this? Okay, wait a minute. I'm getting screwed up here. Okay, so we established this is a guitar. We established that this is a electric guitar. So what is this? So what's the difference between these two things? Okay, so back in like the 1500s where somebody pulled out their guitar, did we say, oh, this guy's going to play an acoustic guitar? No, there wasn't an electric guitar. I saw this the other day, which was kind of funny. Know your eels, electric and acoustic. Okay, look at this. You buy a book, you buy a Bible, let's say, that you think is a historic Bible, and genuinely historic Bible from ages past, and you open it up and you read the inside leaf of the cover and it says this. In recognition of your service in World War I, August 4th, 1926. What's wrong with that? Wasn't World War I. Why wasn't it World War I? Right. What was it called in 1926? The Great War, exactly right. This is what's called a retronym. You guys ever heard the word retronym? Retronym is a name applied to something. Here, I have a definition. A word or phrase created because an existing term that was once used alone needs to be distinguished from a term referring to a new development. The perfect example of that is acoustic guitar or World War I. World War I had to have a name because World War II had happened. What this means is that the thing in the past is at what's called a retronym disadvantage or a missing retronym disadvantage. What that means is the thing in the past no longer has a name because the new thing has the name. How does that apply to our industry? Headless CMS has a name. What is a non-headless CMS? Does it have a name?
Headful CMS.
What's that?
Headful
Head full doesn't exist. How many different ways have you seen people try to name non-headless CMS? Let's count them, shall we? Monolithic, traditional, coupled, legacy. Oh, I love that one. That's super fun. That doesn't make me feel old at all. What did you just say? Head full? I've seen head full. You know, Core Media out of Germany, they had head full CMS. It's like their thing. Web CMS. There's a million different ways. Integrated CMS. That's great. There's a million different ways. This is what's called a retronym. The only reason we have to do this is because the phrase headless CMS exists. This has put whatever we're calling this thing that we used to do back in the day, this is a retronym disadvantage, or what's called a missing retronym disadvantage. It's tough for things not to have a name, and I'm going to give you a really interesting example of this. Heat waves. Heat waves don't have names. There's heat wave, 100 mil in the U.S. under heat alerts. Just heat wave, generic heat wave. U.S. heat sets records, just generic heat wave. Scorching heat wave on its way to someplace. Just generic heat wave. They just kind of bleed into each other. Hurricanes have names. We know about hurricanes because they have names. With a hurricane name, we can refer to a specific hurricane, not the one that was before, but this one that's happening now. I was reading about hurricane names. Did you know they used to be solely named after women? And then women got upset because there's like this so incredibly destructive thing named for women. So now they alternate. It's women and men named. They go in the order of the alphabet. There is an organization that is trying to name heat waves. And they started with the city of Seville in Spain. Apparently Seville is subjected to a lot of crazy weather. And so they tried to name heat waves. The organization is called I don't remember what it's called. This is the project, Prometeo Seville project. They're trying to name heat waves. So every time a heat wave hits Seville, they're giving it a name. And the first one was Zoe, heat wave Zoe. And they went back and they did a study after heat wave Zoe hit. And they found that people recalled hearing about Zoe were more likely to engage in safe behaviors. And they could recall that they had heard warnings about that heat wave more than before it had a name. Because names matter. Names are the way we frame things, they're the way we remember things. Something doesn't have an identity, it doesn't have a value, it doesn't have importance until we put a name on it. Who remembers this book? This is the Red Book. I wrote Christina Halverson. She's a friend. I wrote Christina, and I said, who invented the term content strategy? And she goes, well, that's like a huge argument. Everybody arguments about who invented the term. But she noted that Rachel Lovinger has done some research on this. There were 286,000 searches for content strategy in 2009, and then this book was published, and there were 4.2 million searches after that. So content strategies was a thing that everybody knew existed, but it just didn't have a name. And once it had a name, what happened? It got an identity. Suddenly there was an identity. It was a group of people who identified with it. And I can tell you the existence, the emergence of the name content strategy effectively killed this organization. Who remembers this organization? Content Management Professionals. I've talked to a lot of the founders behind this organization, and they had put a large name on anybody that worked with content management, anybody who worked with content management systems. And what they found is that it was all well and good up until about 2000, 2008, when content strategy got a name. And then a huge chunk of people that belonged to this group thought, hey, I'm a content strategist, not a content management professional, and they broke off of the organization. The rise, and I'm not bitter or anything, but the rise of content strategy really sunk the organization Content Management Professionals. You had this whole group of people. They were content management. But then a group inside there kind of broke off a subset of content strategy. Nothing changed. These people weren't doing anything different. They just gave themselves a name. By giving themselves a name, they gave themselves an identity. I have learned recently that within the content strategy community, some people are really annoyed about the label content operations. Because what's happening to content strategists now is what happened to content management professionals 15 years ago. Suddenly there's a lot of people in that space that are putting a name on what they do, and they're saying, I'm not a content strategist, I'm a content operations specialist. Nothing's changed. People are doing the same thing they were before. They just have a name now. How much you want to bet we're going to see an organization of content operations specialists? It's going to become a thing. I wrote a foreword for a book that was about content operations. 15 years ago, this would have been a book about content strategy, but now it has a name. We keep refining these things and kind of putting boxes around them. I have 2 cats. Anybody have cats? Man, cats love to sit in boxes. What is that all about? You put a box on the floor, there's a subreddit called The Cat Trap is Working, where people put pictures, like if their cat's bothering them, they'll put a shoebox out and the cat will go sit in the shoebox and think that it solved the world's problems where you're just getting some work done. Cats love to sit in boxes. Human beings, we love boxes. Living things, we love boundaries around things. We try to put boundaries around things all the time. And one of the things we do is we use names to do that. Who's heard the concept of the unmarked category? The demographic default. The unmarked category, the demographic default, is the thing that rightly or wrongly people just assume. In the United States, the demographic default would be a straight, white, evangelical Christian. Might be considered, for rightly, I'm not endorsing that by any stretch, but that's the demographic default. You are the unmarked category. In society, being the unmarked category is of benefit to you. As a straight, white, male Christian, I occupy the default demographic, and societally speaking, that's really my benefit to me. In terms of technology, branding, and marketing, it's actually a liability, especially in technology. And the reason for that is that names progress. And when a name progresses, when a discipline subdivides to give itself another name, what was the default category is now marked by age and obsolescence. So in the CMS space, you see headless CMS has a name. We don't have a name. I say we, I'm not setting this up to be adversarial. But if you are not a headless CMS, you're now in the unmarked category. If this was demographic society, that would be an advantage, but it's not, it's technology. And what this means is that technology has left you behind. There's a guy who's trying to be the unmarked category on the US presidential ballot. The man changed his name to, I quote, literally anybody else. That's his name, and he's going on the ballot. So it's going to be Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, and literally anybody else. This guy is trying to take advantage of being the unmarked category. Names imply values. Names assign value to things. Here's the big three reasons why we have to name the thing. In technology, the unmarked category implies age and obsolescence. Being the unmarked category in society is a value. Being the unmarked category in technology is not a value. What's the opposite of a smartphone? That's the closest we're getting, a dumb phone. Who wants to be a dumb phone? Nobody wants to be the dumb phone. Okay, so in technology, if you didn't get a name, then technology has accelerated past you. A missing name allows for people to invent their own names, like dumb phone. That was dramatic. We're really great about that. Like monolith, like legacy. If you don't have a name, someone will invent a name for you. If you don't put a box around yourself, somebody will put a box around you. And depending on who that person is, it's probably not going to be a flattering box. And then finally, to name something really implies respect for its unique qualities. You want to learn the name of a person just to give them respect as a unique human being. I'm really anal retentive about pronouncing people's name right, and I guarantee now that I've said this, sometime in the next 24 hours, I'm going to mispronounce a name, and you're going to be like, what the hell? But I'm really careful about that because a name matters to somebody. For you to take the time to understand somebody's name, pronounce somebody's name, it implies respect. I just saw this while I was putting together this talk. I just saw this in a magazine called Plow. It's a Christian magazine. So this is going to be a little dramatic, but it was about someone who learned all the names of bird species. Their parents encouraged them to learn the names of bird species. And they wrote this really nice, beautiful, kind of haunting essay about the fact that learning the names of things implies and imbues respect to those things. To name something is an act of love. Done rightly, naming bestows value, dignity, and an identity on what is named. It's attentive, recognizing the nature of the thing. If something doesn't have a name, we're not recognizing it as a thing of value. That's why this conference is important. We need to start using the name Universal CMS. We need to put ourselves in a box. We need to put a label on ourselves before somebody else does it. So what I'm going to encourage you is go out and evangelize the name. Evangelize the name Universal CMS. Use it, explain it to people, put it in context so people understand. And we're going to move from this incredibly spiritual justification for learning names to the great philosophers of our time, Beyonce. Say my name. That's what's important. All right, that's it. Thank you very much.